Have you ever wondered what it takes to go from this to this?
Whoa! Boy, he has not been able to get in the lane, but man, oh man!
Or this to this?
Oh, not again. No!
Or maybe even this to this?
3 professors from Florida State University, Drs. Ericsson, Roring, and Nandagopal, investigated the mechanisms behind elite performance in their review paper published in the journal High Ability Studies in June 2007. This paper was a review that summed up the evidence regarding how the elite in many fields become that way. There is a disagreement in the academic community whether elite athletes, musicians, scientists, and others are blessed with an innate ability or whether they develop it through practice. Dr. Ericsson et al. Come down squarely on the side of practice. The beginning of this idea came when Dr. Ericsson met with a memory expert who could recite thousands of digits of pi from memory.
Goes like this. The first 100, say 3 but 1 for 159, 2 6 5 3 5 8 9 7 9 3, 2 3 for 6, 2 6 4 3 8 3 2 7 9 5 9 2 8 8 4 9 7 1 6 9 3 9 3 7 5 1 0 5 8 2 9 7 4 9 4 5 9 2 3 0 7 1 6 4 0 6 2 8.
I think this lady here detected an.
Though most people believe that this man must have been blessed with superior genetics, there were no differences gene-wise when he was compared to normal people. Additionally, Dr. Ericsson trained a normal student in his lab for many hours and improved his memory over 70 standard deviations. After further studies with similar results, he concluded that memory expertise came from practice rather than innate superiority. This paper is split into 4 sections. In the first, the authors talk about the problems with evidence of elite performance. The authors note often that evidence of expertise is anecdotal or subjective based on cultural factors. For example, people that are considered to be expert wine tasters, when blindfolded, can identify expensive wines from cheap wines no better than the average person. The authors reject this type of evidence in favor of a more rigorous type that is measurable, can be reproduced in a lab, and can be compared to a control group. The second section talks about the mechanism by which elite performers attain their greatness. The authors discuss how there are distinct states of performance, and as people improve, they move through these stages. However, they argue that deliberate practice is the method by which they move from one stage to the other. No study has ever shown a motivated, healthy individual unable to attain a skill after training. As a result, the authors believe that innate abilities cannot be the explanation for expertise. The authors then mention evidence that supports their theory. For example, chess players, even supposed prodigies like Bobby Fischer, all take at least 10 years to be considered elite. Additionally, there have been no studies that have shown an abrupt increase in skill without practice. This figure presented in their paper is a good example of evidence that supports the author's assertions. Professional musicians have practiced for 10,000 hours, whereas merely good musicians have practiced for 5,000 to 8,000 hours in the same number of years. It is this that explains the difference in their skill level, not a difference in genetics. However, the authors are quick to point out that it must be deliberate practice with full concentration on a goal of improving. Mere experience is not sufficient. Using chess players as evidence again, they found that the best chess players were not those that had played in the most tournaments. It was those that had spent the most amount of time alone studying games and situations in which they might find themselves. The third section deals with how deliberate practice leads to the physiological and anatomical changes that lead to superior performance. While many people believe that these are modulated by genetics, the authors show that with the exception of height, body size, and various illnesses such as blindness or deafness, one's body can be shaped by practice. For example, elite long-distance runners are able to increase the size of their heart and their pumping capacity after years of practice. However, when they stop their training, their heart size reverts back to levels seen in non-athletes. This shows that they are not genetically predisposed to have a larger heart. Additionally, the superior speed of expert performers in dynamic sports, or even activities such as typing, is not due to a faster basic speed of their motor system, which does not predict expert performance. It is rather the many hours of practice which allow performers to acquire cognitive representations which allow them to be more prepared for alternative actions and avoid mistakes. The fourth section deals with potential constraints on expert performers. For example, there are certain skills, such as ballet, whose intense practice during a critical period is needed. Otherwise, skills in the future can only go so high. There is, however, little evidence in either direction regarding potential limits on performance in a motivated individual. However, the authors, in an attempt to discount the possibility of innate constraints on individuals, do point to differences in superior performance over just the last century, which are therefore unlikely due to gene changes. As training regimens have improved and become more rigorous in the last century, records in sports have improved dramatically. For example, the gold medal winners at the first Olympic Games would barely qualify as an amateur time in the Boston Marathon today. If differences in genes led to an upper limit on performance, why would today's amateurs be superior to earlier elite performers? In conclusion, after reviewing the available data, Dr. Ericsson et al. Write a convincing review of the power of deliberate practice to produce expert performance. Though their critics accuse the authors of extreme environmentalism, the authors are quick to point out that they believe it is possible that genes have some effect on expert performance. However, no verifiable, reproducible evidence has been found that demonstrates that. Additionally, they believe one area that genes might regulate is motivation. It is possible that some people are born with the drive to practice, whereas others are not. An apt metaphor that Dr. Ericsson uses to describe expert performance is climbing a mountain. The fact that many people avoid climbing the mountain does not prove that they are incapable of doing so. It is this way with expert performance. Very few people are willing to put in the thousands of hours of deliberate practice required to become an elite performer in any given field. However, with enough practice, anyone can become the best.